It is January 2026. Look at the map of the world. What do you see? If you look through the lens of the evening news, you see a chessboard on the brink of fire. You see lines drawn in the sand. You see the East and the West, two titans locked in a dance of dominance that seems destined to end in a flash of blinding light. We are told that we are enemies. We are told that our values are incompatible. We are told that survival is a zero-sum game. The rhetoric has never been hotter. The missiles have never been faster. The fear has never been deeper. But what if the narrative we are being fed is incomplete? What if the destiny of nations is not written by generals in war rooms, but by the collective soul of the people? And what if the salvation of humanity comes from the very place we have been trained to fear the most? 80 years ago, in the midst of another great global conflict, a man in Virginia Beach closed his eyes and saw beyond the veil of politics. He saw the spiritual currents that drive history. His name was Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. He predicted the crash of 1929. He predicted the rise and fall of Hitler. He predicted the shifting of the poles. But among his thousands of readings, there is one prophecy that stands out as the most controversial, the most baffling, and perhaps the most urgent for our time. In 1944, while the world was bleeding, Cayce looked at the sprawling landmass of Russia. He did not see an enemy. He did not see an empire of evil. He saw a light. He uttered a sentence that has haunted scholars and mystics for decades. In Russia, there comes the hope of the world. Not the United States, not Europe, not China, Russia. Why? Why would an American psychic, a devout Christian, place the future of humanity in the hands of a nation that was, at the time, officially atheist and communist? Was he wrong? Was he deceived? Or did he see something in the Russian soul that the West has blinded itself to? Something that is finally, in the chaotic dawn of 2026, beginning to crystallize. Today, we are going to embark on a journey that is forbidden by the mainstream narrative. We are going to declassify the spiritual dossier of Russia. We will decode Cayce's vision of the new freedom. We will analyze the karmic relationship between America and Russia, the eagle and the bear. And we will answer the terrifying question: is the current conflict the end of the world, or is it the painful birth pangs of the brotherhood of man? This is not a story about politics. This is a story about destiny. To understand the prophecy, we must first strip away the prejudice. We must go back to the source. The reading is number 3976-29. The date is June 22nd, 1944. The reading begins with a sweep of the globe, analyzing the sins of all nations. Cayce was an equal opportunity critic. He called out England for its arrogance. He called out France for its lust. He called out America for its worship of the God of gold. And then he turned his inner eye to Russia. He said, "In Russia there comes the hope of the world, not as that sometimes termed of the communistic or Bolshevik, no, but freedom, freedom, that each man will live for his fellow man. The principle has been born. It will take years for it to be crystallized, but out of Russia comes again the hope of the world." Notice the disclaimer: not communistic. Cayce was not praising a political system. He was identifying a spiritual potential. He saw that beneath the surface of political oppression, the Russian people possessed a unique quality, a capacity for suffering, a capacity for brotherhood, a deep, mystical connection to the land and to each other that the individualistic West had lost. He called it the principle of living for one's fellow man. In the West, our freedom is defined as freedom from interference, freedom to do what I want, freedom to accumulate wealth for myself. It is the freedom of the individual. But Cayce saw a different kind of freedom rising in the East. Freedom to serve, freedom to be part of a whole, the freedom of the collective soul. But to truly understand why Russia is the hope, we must dig deeper into the spiritual DNA of the Slavic people. We must look at a concept that has no direct translation in English.
There are 3 simple changes I tell all of my arthritis patients to make.
In the West, we have community, which is a group of individuals living together. But so and why Russia is the hope, we must dig deeper into the spiritual DNA of the Slavic people. We must look at a concept that has no direct translation in English. The Russians call it sobornost. In the West, we have community, which is a group of individuals living together. But sobornost is a spiritual unity, a state where many minds are united in love and freedom, mirroring the unity of the divine. It is the idea that I cannot be saved unless you are saved. Cayce saw that the Western model of survival of the fittest is a biological dead end. It creates a civilization of winners and losers, billionaires and beggars. The sobornost of the future Russia is not about state control. It is about spiritual connection. It is the realization that we are all cells in the same body. While the West spent the 20th century perfecting the I, the ego, the East preserved the secret of the we, the spirit. And in 2026, as the structures of the ego, the stock markets, the social media vanity, the celebrity culture begin to collapse under their own weight, the world will desperately search for the secret of the we. This brings us to the most dangerous and forbidden part of Cayce's geopolitical vision. The part that most editors remove from the books because it is too shocking for the Western mind to accept. It concerns the connection between Russia and China. In reading 3976-29, the same reading where he praised Russia, Cayce looked further east. He said, "Yea, eventually China will awake, and these will become the cradle of Christianity as applied in the lives of men." Let that sink in. China, the cradle of Christianity? Again, Cayce was not talking about the religion of the church. He was not saying everyone in Beijing would convert to Catholicism. He was talking about the application of the teachings of Jesus. And what was that teaching? Love thy neighbor as thyself. Cayce predicted a future geopolitical triad. He saw America as the supply, the industrial and creative engine. He saw Russia as the hope, the spiritual and brotherly philosophy. And he saw China as the application, the place where these principles would eventually be turned into a living, breathing social system. Looking at 2026, with the alliance between Russia and China strengthening, we are seeing the physical formation of this bloc. Currently, it looks like a threat to the West. But Cayce suggests a longer arc of history. He suggests that this alliance is not just about opposing NATO. It is about birthing a new way of organizing human life that moves away from the God of gold. Let us speak plainly about this God of gold. Cayce warned that the sin of America was not its people, but its financial system. He referenced the biblical concept of usury, making money from money without creating value. Look at our world today. The financial sector is the master, and the people are the servants. We are drowning in debt. Cayce saw that Russia's role, its hope, might be to act as the hammer that breaks this chain of usury. By challenging the dominance of the Western financial system, Russia is forcing a global reset. Is it painful? Yes. Does it look like war? Yes. But historically, the money changers do not leave the temple quietly. They have to be driven out. The hope that comes from Russia is the hope of a world where value is based on resources and human labor, not on digital speculation and debt. It is a return to reality. And there is another layer to this Russian mystery. It involves the land itself, Siberia. As we discussed in our Ice Age dossier, the climate is changing. As the equator burns and the poles shift, the vast frozen lands of Russia are thawing. Geologists confirm that Siberia holds the greatest untapped wealth of natural resources on the planet: water, minerals, arable land. Cayce saw that in the future, as other parts of the world become uninhabitable due to the earth changes, Russia would become the breadbasket of the world. The hope is also literal. It is the hope of food. It is the hope of water. When the Mississippi splits and the American breadbasket floods, the world may turn to the Russian steppes for survival. The nation we sanction today may be the nation that feeds us tomorrow. This is the irony of karma. This is the humor of the universe. He predicted that this concept would evolve. He said it would take years to crystallize. Looking back from 2026, we can see the crystallization process. It was forged in fire. Cayce accurately predicted the fall of the Soviet Union. He said, "The yoke of oppression must be lifted." And it was. But he also warned that what replaced it must be righteous. He foresaw that after the collapse of communism, Russia would not simply become a copy of the West. It would have to find its own soul again. It would have to return to its spiritual roots.
Just put this sheet on your bed, plug it into the wall.
Ultimate prophecy, the part that is playing out right now on the world stage. The religious rebirth of the Soviet Union. He said, "The yoke of oppression must be lifted." And it was. But he also warned that what replaced it must be righteous. He foresaw that after the collapse of communism, Russia would not simply become a copy of the West. It would have to find its own soul again. It would have to return to its spiritual roots. And this brings us to the ultimate prophecy, the part that is playing out right now on the world stage. The religious rebirth. Cayce laid out a specific spiritual roadmap for Russia. He said, "Guided by what? That friendship with the nation that hath even set on its present monetary unit, in God we trust." He foresaw a time when the United States and Russia would be allies. I know. Looking at the headlines today, looking at the proxy wars and the sanctions, this sounds like insanity. But prophets see the long game. They see the currents deep beneath the waves. Cayce believed that America had the form of spirituality. In God we trust, but had lost the spirit of it to materialism. He believed Russia had the spirit of brotherhood, but lacked the freedom to express it. The destiny of the world, according to Cayce, relies on these two halves becoming whole. America is the cradle. Russia is the hope. The prophecy suggests that the hope would eventually reignite the spiritual fire in the cradle. But why Russia? Why not India with its yoga? Why not Tibet? To understand this, we must look at geomancy, the spirituality of geography. Esoteric traditions have always taught that different lands hold different vibrations. The West holds the vibration of the mind, the intellect, technology, analysis. The East holds the vibration of the spirit, meditation, transcendence. But Russia sits in the middle. It is the bridge. Metaphysically, Russia represents the heart chakra of the planet. The heart is the center of suffering, yes, but it is also the center of compassion. It is the alchemical furnace where pain is transformed into love. Look at Russian literature. It is all about the redemption of the soul through suffering. It is about the rejection of shallow materialism in favor of deep, messy, human connection. Cayce saw that as the West descends further into the coldness of AI, digital isolation, and hyper-capitalism, the world would starve for heart. The world would starve for a philosophy that says, "We are all one." And he saw that this philosophy would re-emerge from the frozen steppes. Now, let us bring this to the harsh reality of 2026. How can a nation currently embroiled in conflict be the hope of anything? This is where the prophecy becomes a warning. Cayce warned that if the sins of the nations were not corrected, the result would be catastrophe. He said, "What is the spirit of America? Most individuals proudly boast freedom. Freedom of what? When ye bind men's hearts and minds with ways and manners and customs, does it mean freedom?" He saw that the West would become enslaved by its own financial systems, a debt-based slavery. He saw that Russia would challenge this system. Is it possible that the current geopolitical conflict is not just a war over borders, but a war over the definition of civilization? On one side, a unipolar world driven by globalist finance and secular technology. On the other, a multipolar world driven by national sovereignty and traditional values. Cayce did not take sides in a political sense, but he did take sides in a spiritual sense. He stood against the God of Gold. He implied that the disruption coming from Russia, the challenge to the established order, might be necessary to break the yoke of financial oppression that has gripped the globe. It is a painful hope. It is a hope that comes through the destruction of the old structures. But there is a darker timeline. A timeline we must acknowledge if we are to be honest. Cayce was asked about the possibility of the Third World War. He said, "Strifes will arise, and there will be seen turmoil." He warned that if the nations did not return to God, they would return to the sword. In 2026, we are seeing the weaponization of everything: currency, energy, information, food. The prophecy of Russia as the hope is conditional.
I'm Shannon Grief, the founder of the Natural.
The American people. If Russia falls back into the temptation of the globe, it is a painful hope. It is a hope that comes through the destruction of the old structures. But there is a darker timeline. A timeline we must acknowledge if we are to be honest. Cayce was asked about the possibility of the Third World War. He said, "Strifes will arise, and there will be seen turmoil." He warned that if the nations did not return to God, they would return to the sword. In 2026, we are seeing the weaponization of everything: currency, energy, information, food. The prophecy of Russia as the hope is conditional. It depends on the choices of the Russian people and the response of the American people. If Russia falls back into the temptation of empire, the hope is delayed. If America refuses to share its abundance and insists on dominance, the cradle is overturned. We are in the testing period. So, what happens next? What does the timeline of 2026 to 2030 hold? Cayce's vision suggests a period of immense turmoil, followed by an unexpected reconciliation. He saw that the godless forces would eventually destroy themselves. He saw that the earth changes, the volcanoes, the floods, the pole shift, would ultimately render political borders irrelevant. When the Mississippi River splits, and when the volcanoes of Italy erupt, America and Russia will be too busy surviving to fight. The earth itself will force the brotherhood that we refuse to build voluntarily. When the lights go out, as per the 3 days of darkness prophecy, we will not care about capitalism or communism. We will care about who has a candle. In that darkness, Cayce believed, the Russian spirit, the resilience, the ability to endure suffering, the communal warmth, would become a beacon. They know how to survive the winter. They know how to share a loaf of bread. The hope is not that Russia conquers the world. It is that Russia reminds the world how to be human when the machines stop working. This leads to the ultimate twist in Cayce's vision for the relationship between the US and Russia. He foresaw a time when the leadership of both nations would change. He spoke of a leveling. There must come then a leveling, that there may be the greater freedom. This leveling is happening now. The economic collapse is the leveler. Cayce hoped for a future where American creativity and Russian soulfulness would combine. He said that this union would create the greatest civilization mankind has ever known. A civilization that balances the head and the heart, the material and the spiritual. This seems impossible today. But prophets see the destination, not the roadblocks. So what does this mean for you, watching this in 2026? It means you must question the narrative. When you see the fear-mongering on the news, remember Cayce's words. Do not fall into the trap of hatred. Hatred lowers your vibration. Hatred anchors you to the 3D timeline of destruction. Understand that the souls born in Russia are your brothers and sisters. They are part of the same divine plan. The hope of the world is not a politician. It is a frequency. It is the frequency of living for one's fellow man. Can you hold that frequency? Can you look at your enemy and see a mirror? Because that is the test of the Aquarian age. The transition will be messy. The birth of the new era is painful. But the promise remains. Out of Russia comes again the hope of the world. Maybe the hope is simply the realization that there is another way to live. A way that puts the soul before the dollar. A way that honors the earth. The bear has awakened. The eagle is watching. But the dove is waiting. In our next video, we will explore the final piece of the puzzle. The technology that will power this new civilization. Cayce predicted the discovery of a blue stone, a new form of energy that would make oil and nuclear obsolete. Where is it? Is it in Russia? Is it in Antarctica? We will hunt for the Atlantis power crystal in our next dossier. Subscribe so you don't miss the revelation. Question everything. Fear nothing. And remember, Spirit is the life.